Welcome to Health in Veritas. I'm Harlan Krumholtz.
And I'm Howie Foreman. We're physicians and professors at Yale University, and we're trying to get closer to the truth about health and healthcare. And this is one of our fun segments in the studio on College Street.
It's so good to see you, Howie.
And we have special guests coming.
Oh, my God, you look younger every time I see him.
I really appreciate that, Harlan.
You do.
I'm
amazing.
almost going to look
I don't know.
as young
You are
as
not a super ager. You're super younger.
I keep my skin lustrous by drinking lots of water. But do tell. Why don't we start off? This is one of the segments where we don't have a single guest. We have special guests coming along later. What do you have for us to start?
Well, by the way, since I started calling you a super younger, there is that. I think I said super ager because you've seen our friend Eric Topol's got a book coming out.
Absolutely. In fact, we have him on the schedule to talk about that book in a few months.
I think he's orienting this book towards a real science-based approach. As I understand it, he's got tens of thousands of references, and he digs into the facts. I love his Substack. He really gets into the facts, and so it should be good to see.
No, he is fantastic, and I think we've mentioned before the Substack is called Ground Truth. It's worth reading, but it is definitely written for a sophisticated science audience.
Yeah, no, I can't wait till it comes out. It's coming out in just a couple of weeks. And then our friend Zeke Emanuel told us he's got a book coming out.
He's got, I think, 2 books coming out.
Yeah, but one about wellness.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think they all saw Peter Adia.
You had a book. You had a book about 20 years ago or about 15 years ago.
Thank you for remembering.
The Heart.
I'm going to write a new one.
You should.
Yeah, I'm going to write a new one.
But what was that called?
It's hard work.
What was the book called?
The book I read?
Yeah.
Well, it was a guide to
how to
your
prevent
heart disease.
Right? It was something like Guide to Your Heart.
I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, my God. I'm remembering your enough. Anyway, it was a great book. Yep.
It did sell 10,000 issues. I was very proud of that.
You should be.
All right. I'm going to work. I got to work harder. I got to catch up with these guys. But yeah, there's a lot of good books coming out. So what's on your mind this week?
Look, I wanted to talk a little about me as a patient. And you and I have talked about this, but we haven't talked about this for our audience before. I've mentioned it as a glancing blow maybe. And that is that since 1990, I've had paroxysmal Afib, which I was 25 years old when it was first diagnosed, and it really disrupted my life in a lot of ways.
And, paroxysmal, for people listening, this is intermittent atrial fibrillation. It's not sustained. It's not there all the time. And so we tend to use this word paroxysmal. But, paroxysmal, by the way, is a wide range of things. So, like for you, what did paroxysmal mean? How often was it coming on?
It varied by the year, but it could happen several times in a month. It could happen no times in a year. But when it happened, it was very indeterminate about how long it would last. And so I was always faced with the possibility of having to go on medications and or being anticoagulated with, at that time, drugs that would have been much more debilitating, would have put me at risks of not just bruising, but head bleeds and other problems.
Yeah, the interesting thing about paroxysmal AFib, I find, is that lots of people will dismiss it. Say, well, most of the time you're not in atrial fibrillation. I mean, there's a decision about anticoagulation, but what they don't realize is the cognitive load. Once this happens to someone, it's always on their mind. Am 100%. I going to do something that's going to trigger it? And then people are trying to figure out what triggers it. That, oh my God, I ate soup today. It was cold. And so the cognitive load is considerable.
And it interferes with your life because if you don't know where you're going to be when it happens, you have to contemplate, could this happen when I'm on a trip with family? Could this happen when I'm in the middle of a call shift? Is it going to impact my ability to do what I need to do? It's very distracting.
Yeah. And there's, I think, an example where sometimes in the medical profession, we think, well, what's the big deal? But actually for patients, this thing can be. So what did you do about it?
So for 23 years, I managed it by either converting spontaneously, which rarely happened, or going into the emergency room and getting
converting spontaneously means that you have atrial fibrillation, then suddenly
it just goes away.
It goes away.
Right. But more often than not, I went into the hospital and I got cardioverted under anesthesia. And
that means they shocked you.
Correct.
I'm just saying, not everybody's
absolutely.
in medicine here.
No, I'm happy that you're saying it. Yeah. And for those 23 years, it was...
And how big a deal was it to get... I mean, they gave you, like you said, anesthesia. They knocked you out, so you didn't feel the shock.
Not at all. And it was a disruption to my day. I always had to figure out when I was going to go in and get cardioverted because you're going to
You never fainted with this. This was just
Never.
you just felt the symptom.
I had, in fact, something called vagal AFib, which meant my rate was slower than average for AFib. I had also learned by the end that I could cardiovert myself by exercising, by getting my heart rate to go above the rate of this atrial ectopic beat. So there were a lot of things going on. I met an amazing cardiologist at Yale named Joe Akar about...
He's one of my favorites. He's terrific.
He is terrific. And I met him about 13 years ago. He became my cardiologist. And he's the first one to say, you should have an ablation. And I was like, I'd rather start with meds finally. Like I knew it was happening too often. And so I went on flecainide.
And what is an ablation?
An ablation, which we're going to get to.
I mean, I know what it is.
I know, but for our listeners, it's a scarring of the heart, in particular around the pulmonary veins, which is where these foci seem to start off and trigger, that has seemingly been extremely effective in reducing the likelihood of getting sustained atrial fibrillation. So I put it off. I started on medications in 2013, and I
remember that.
Yeah, and by the end of last year, I had gone from what was a low dose to what I considered to be a high dose of flecainide.
But it was working.
Working very well, but the dose had been going up, and I knew that I was going to hit a point.
So it was working. Why did you increase the dose?
Oh, because it would stop working.
Oh, I see.
You'd get to a point where it was breaking through more and more and more, and you'd go up in the dose. So you start at 50 twice a day, and you'd go up to, for me, as a crazy person, 53 times a day, and came up with all permutations. By the end, I was taking about 200 milligrams a day. And while you could go a little higher than that, I'm a smallish person, and I felt like I was at the upper limit of what my body should tolerate based on the science that we knew. And so I committed to doing the ablation in October, and October 26th, in fact, and it has been enormously successful. And I will say, when I think about it as someone who teaches about health policy, it's an extremely expensive procedure, far more expensive than if I could have stayed on meds for the rest of my life. But it's changed my life and made me far less worried about going to AFib every single day.
Well, and you were a winner. I mean, there are people who undergo this procedure and then the AFib comes back. And,
That's right.
And then they go undergo it again, it comes back.
That's right.
So it's all about probabilities.
And I still think there's a good chance that I'll need a second procedure at some point in the future. But in terms of outcomes, in terms of how fast I recovered from it, in terms of my ability to carry on my life better than it was before, it's really nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing well.
Yeah, no. So I just wanted our listeners to know that, because AFib is like 5% of the population. As you get older, it's more and more people. The majority of my immediate family members have had AFib by now. So
some genetic component. Yeah.
There's got to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
Well, yeah, I want to talk about a blog a friend of mine posted on LinkedIn yesterday, which people might find interesting. It was called The 4 AI Agents of Your Health. Now, you know, people are talking a lot about AI. We've talked a lot about AI. And people are talking about AI agents. I often think some people who aren't familiar with the field might think, what the hell are AI agents? You know, they represent applications that are specific for a certain function. You know, there's kind of a narrow thing. The foundational models like ChatGPT
can do all.
They're good for everything. Right. You know, and these are supposed to be optimized, honed for specific tasks. You're kind of putting the AI to work. So Carl Byers, who's a partner at F Prime Capital, and of course we're friends with Steve Knight at F Prime, and I do some consulting for them. He wrote a provocative post sort of laying out a framework about saying, you know, I think that AI could work, this AI agents can work, and we really should be thinking about it in 4 major buckets. And he said, so the first agent is an archivist. This is the one who knows everything about you. It's kind of the one that's pulling together your history, your wearables, your genomics, your labs. And AI is ensuring that the record's complete and organized and inaccessible. You know, this is kind of some of the work I was...
Is that something that's commercially available? I mean, like you had a company built around this, but is that something that is commercially available to an individual
Not
right
yet,
now?
No,
okay.
But it was my dream with the company was that people could pull their data and would do this. So that I really like that. That's the archivist. So it's actually pulling together the data and information. The second is a diagnostician, you know, basically in a traditional physician role, who's sort of powered by AI, looking at the patterns of information in your data and helping to, you know, sort of make predictions to help guide what should be done, making diagnoses, sort of updating your profile continuously. You know, imagine more information is coming in about you, and then it says this day, well, you're on your way to X or Y, and helping to do that. The third was the planner, who turns this sort of analysis. So the first was pulling the data together. The second was making sense of the data. The third is putting together plans for what you should do about the situation you have given the situation you're in. And it sort of turns the diagnosis into personalized plans. It figures out what needs to happen next, your prescriptions, your screenings, your lifestyle medications, coordinates logistics based on your insurance, your network, even your travel schedule. And then the fourth one is called the guide. This is really your coach, your interpreter, your advocate.
To get you to do.
This is the one speaking in plain language, helping you understand what your situation is and what you might want to do about it, helps keeping you motivated.
Yeah.
And
sounds like the Apple Watch.
So anyway, I just thought this was very interesting. You know, he also goes on to say that, like in the current healthcare system, you know, with proprietary data, fragmented care, fee-for-service incentives, workflows that resist innovation, you know, it's hard to see exactly how you get to where we could be from where we are today. But what I liked about it was I really liked the construct, you know, being able to think about it in these ways. Because if you're thinking about building companies or you're thinking about building innovation, these are 4 target areas where we could be doing a lot better and the AI could help us.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I think what the public needs to understand is that our use case for AI is going to build tremendously over the next few years. And everybody's talked about this as a theoretical thing in the past, and now we actually do have some use cases.
But the key will be not that you have AI, because AI almost is going to be commoditized. It's that you figured out where it fits that actually improves outcomes, makes a difference, makes people feel better.
Right.
And that's going to be the key. And that's why I like what Carl sort of did. He was sort of putting together a construct where that might happen.
It's good when people can lay it out. Thank you. So I wanted to briefly update people on measles right now. It's in the news a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But I want to point out there is bad news, there's good news. The bad news is the outbreak is now over 800 cases nationwide. And
800 cases?
And that's the CDC number, which lags the individual states. Wow. So we're probably well above that, and that doesn't count the cases that will never count.
And how many cases did we have 5 years ago?
So 6 years ago, we had, I have it written down actually, 1274. 6 years ago, we had 1274. So we're going to be way over that because based on everything I can tell from looking at the epi curve, we may be at the peak right now. So imagine that whatever we have right now, it's going to double at least double by the end of the year, but we'll probably have more than that. So, and there are 27 states now with cases. The biggest outbreak remains this West Texas outbreak, which includes West Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. But 24 other states have cases, some of which may be tied to this, we're not sure, many of which are international travelers, some of which are outbreaks that started with international travelers. And I will say, and I'm not meaning this to be political, but the recent cuts to the CDC and the money's going to the states make it a lot harder for us to track this and mitigate it. So we have to stay tuned, we have to watch, and we have to hope that the states themselves are continuing to be really aggressive in screening for this. But the good news is that we have not had more deaths in the last several weeks. So we still have 3 nationally. And the other good news is, as I said, many of the recent cases that we're learning about, many of the new states, do seem to have started from an international traveler. So the Texas outbreak is not seeding multiple additional outbreaks far beyond Texas. So that's, I think, relatively good news. And the other good news is that even though measles is not traditionally talked about as a seasonal virus, it is a respiratory spread virus. And therefore, you expect sort of late winter, early spring is when you would see the peak or the end of an outbreak. And I think that also bodes well for this. But as I said, 1274 is the number for 2019. 2126 is the number for 1992. And just as importantly, our country is considered to have eliminated measles as of 2000. Almost certainly our elimination status will be over. We will be back to having endemic measles in the United States. And that's very unfortunate. We had a 24-year run, and it's probably over.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for bringing that. And we've had 2 deaths, right? 2 deaths, you said.
2 that the CDC has confirmed, an additional one that is believed to be measles-related.
Wow. Yeah, that's tragic. All right, well, let me pivot to something that, for me, is highlighting something special, both professionally and personally. So I'll start with a question. You know, how much nutrition education did you get in medical school?
trying to think if I had. I did have a little bit because I had a community health course that emphasized social determinants of health, but really to your answer, almost nothing.
It's really not much. People are starting to look at this more. There's a food is medicine movement. Well, a new paper was just published in BMC Medical Education titled Cooking with the Curriculum, and it describes a pilot culinary medicine program at the University of Vermont's Larner College of Medicine.
It's written by an author that we're trying to get on the podcast, I want to point out.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you know that we've tried outreach already. We're talking to their agent.
Well, and by the way, we've got a great group here. Nate Wood, I don't know if
I've heard of
Nate,
yep.
in primary care, is doing great work in culinary medicine. But this was developed by a group of medical students. And yes, I'm proud to say the first author of this is my daughter, Sarah Krumholtz.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm so proud of her. So the program was rooted in a simple but powerful idea that physicians are a trusted source of health advice, yet most of them receive very little training in nutrition. She happens to be a registered dietitian, has a master's in nutrition before she went to medical school, so she was kind of sort of tuned into this, that it wasn't an area that was getting a lot of attention. And I think the gap is striking given how we're really growing to appreciate the role that diet plays in prevention and the management of chronic disease. And we can talk a lot about what's going on in DC, but one of the things of highlighting diet is a good thing for chronic disease. So these students, basically created a 5-session course for first-year medical students, which really was trying to help equip them with skills and also for their personal lives too. How they could take care of themselves. And, the results were pretty remarkable. Almost all of them, when they finished the course, said it improved their confidence in offering nutritional counseling. It positioned them better to talk with their patients, put them in a better position for their own lives. But I don't know. Okay, it's my daughter. I'm just very proud dad.
When you shared that with me, I told you right away I wanted to have her on the podcast, and it's not because she's your daughter, and it's not because a medical student wrote about this, but she's a subject matter expert. She's an actual dietitian. She was able to introduce this into the curriculum there and to actually use science to communicate it further beyond that. I can't wait till we get her on here. I hope she'll be able to do that. I know she's also a new mother, and
she is a new mom. Yeah, she's doing great. And I would just say, as a student and seeing her in medical school, the thing that impresses me most, her curiosity. It's great. Like she's always asking questions, always trying to understand.
I have no idea where she got that from.
She's really good. All right, let's go on.
I'm going to tell you real quick, this will be my last segment, but real quick update on H5N1 because we have talked about it many times and it's been many months since we talked. That's, again, a bird flu, highly pathogenic avian influenza. We're now well into a year of this mostly animal outbreak, but again, 64 human cases, 1 death. 170 million birds dead from this, and over 1,000 dairy herds covering 17 states. So,
170 million birds.
Now you understand part of the reason why the egg prices have gone up so much.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I mean this has been impactful. And by the way, there are arguments to be made like, should we be slaughtering all the birds once they get infected? We're basically slaughtering them to prevent further spread. Nobody knows the right answer because it's a new thing. There is one very concerning thing that we learned in the last week. A 8-year-old child in Vietnam developed encephalitis related to this. That's a brain swelling. So I do not want to minimize what this is, but the good news is that most of these numbers are actually slowing their growth. They're becoming they're not growing epidemically in any possible way. So while this remains a major threat, and we still might see a mutation that could allow it to transmit between humans, we are no further toward that outcome than we were when we first talked about it probably 9 or 10 months ago.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because, we got enough things going on in the world right now. I would just prefer not to have another pandemic come down the pike.
Me too.
Well, let alone, I think we're not as well prepared.
I agree.
So
I agree.
All right, we'll kind of wrap up this section because we got something really special here at the end.
Guests.
We have a very special thing at the end. With some good news, I know you're going to love this. So I ran into this paper that was published in Nature Communication that brings into focus how physical exercise might protect the brain. Are you still exercising every day?
I do. About
get on the
1
bike
hour on an exercise bike, and I do yoga twice a week, so I try to do stuff.
Well, you're going to love this story then, because, basically we all sort of have this belief that exercise is good for us, but I've been really interested. This kind of also brings together another interest of mine, which is how the body handles brain waste. Do you know about, have you been following this at all?
No.
So we learned a lot about the lymphatic system when we were in sort of like drainage of, some of the parts of the immune systems, but there's a lymphatic system.
Yeah.
You know about this? It sort of drains from the brain toxic materials that are developed. And there's this idea and some evidence that the brain's creating sort of waste products all the time, and that our ability to sort of transport it out of the brain through the CSF, then, out of the nervous system, is related to our brain health. And that people who have trouble with this system and have buildup of the waste in the brain, and are more susceptible to issues around dementia and so forth. Or at least there's evidence that the kind of things that are associated with dementia are more highly prevalent in people whose systems aren't working as well. So what the researchers did was they took a control group that had sort of exercised once, and they took another group who they had go through an exercise regimen, and then they were, testing them and doing imaging and doing a whole range of different things. And really what they found was that only the long-term exercise, the kind of thing you do, Howie, not a single session, boosted the brain's waste clearance capacity. That lymphatic flow, that really kind of cleanses the brain, improved. And the size and flow through the meningeal lymphatic vessels increased, suggesting that consistent exercise may literally enhance the brain's housekeeping. And I mean, who knows? But when these stories come out and they sort of reinforce my biases around good lifestyle, I tend to. This was a small study. The participants were young and healthy.
I love it.
But so, the generalizing it, and it's going to need to be validated. But this goes with a growing body of evidence that long-term physical activity does more than burn calories or build muscles. It may change the way the brain clears out debris. It may actually help you think clearer. If we're going to try to help people live longer with more cognitive function, we're going to tell them, don't smoke, don't drink, exercise, stay physically active, and keep your brain alive, like social interactions, challenging things. I mean, those are the things that are going to make the difference. Drinking in the end, is not good. Smoking's not good. Exercise is good. Social interaction, good. And challenge yourself to continue to solve problems or be in situations where you're using your brain power. All those are good.
Yeah, no, and look, we had last week our guest talking about cannabis and the effects on the brain. And
so probably don't. That's also
don't do
another
that.
thing. If you care about that.
Yep.
Howie, what a great session we're going to have today. Our research assistants are here today. It's the research assistants.
Sophia, I know, and we've worked with them so closely, but our listeners have not got to meet them. So today they get
Sophia and Inès.
Yes.
I hope you say their names correctly.
Yeah, I think
it should be your turn to say them.
You think so?
Yeah. All right. Well, we have an exciting show today, Howie.
Look, I mean, we've waited for this for a whole year. I don't know why it was so difficult to schedule, but
I can tell you our ratings would have gone way up.
Finally.
If we had included the two of them in our shows.
We finally got Inès Gilles and Sophia Stumpf.
And I challenged Howie. I said, this is your turn to say their names.
Listen, I've been afraid all year, but I've listened to you and I've got it down, and, I think it's okay. It's
they're being polite, not correcting you.
It's a privilege and an honor to finally have you here. But let's give them a chance to tell our audience a little bit. This is a chance for our audience to finally know them a little bit. And we've got a few little icebreaker questions that we're going to read you. I'll alternate with you, but each of you should answer each one. So, since this is really all about us, what was your favorite episode on the podcast?
I can go first. I think my favorite episode...
You need to say who you are.
That's true.
This is Inès. I think an episode that holds a really, really special place in my heart is the first one I ever worked on with Josh Jabal. I remember just being so starstruck by his work that he did with the state of Connecticut and his work leading their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was just so impressive, and I was really excited to work on the podcast.
It was great, and it got a lot of downloads. I remember that we talked about that for a
while.
Well,
Josh is amazing. He's terrific.
Yep.
He is someone who's had experience in such a wide range of areas, and we're lucky that he came to Yale. That's so cool that you
and he shares with you the connection as a Yale alum.
Yeah.
I think for me it was one of the first in-studio recording experiences. I think it was last fall. And it's always super cool to just see the setups, you guys talking together. Oh, right. This is Sophia. And yeah, it's always great to have you guys talk for the full hour, and just seeing the tech and seeing you guys interact is really fun. So yeah, those are my favorites.
We appreciate anybody that thinks listening to us is of value. So we appreciate you as well.
So how about if we want to appeal to a younger audience? What is it that would really... I mean, I know Howie intrinsically is attracts a younger audience.
Absolutely. I'm the TikTok generation.
You are indeed. But do you have thoughts about is it hopeless for us, or is there any chance that we could attract a younger audience?
I personally have friends who have come up to me and been like, OMG, you work on Health and Veritas. I listen to them in the gym. So I think you're doing fine with a younger audience.
Okay, well, that made my day. I don't know about you, Howie.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the short snippets or the video snippets are always great to get more reach. I think you could do more of those.
I think Howie could go viral.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the authority,
Probably
but he's also got
the trouble.
It's the quirkiness about Howie that really, I think, people can't avert their eyes. They want to hear what he's got to say.
It's the fact that I'm willing to get into trouble that probably makes me potentially go viral. Let me ask you this, because to give our listeners a little flavor to this, like, you prepare what I call a dossier for every guest that we have, and that dossier is amazing. And to the credit of the students before you, they did a great job as well, but you took it up a notch in a few different ways. One of those is that you very often will suggest ideas for us about what we might ask that might be interesting to the two of you. And I love that. And we generally try to incorporate something like that in every one. But tell us a little bit about what it takes to create that document, and what do you go to do it?
Sure. I can maybe start by giving a little bit of an overview of what goes into the document. So the first thing that we usually have is a name pronunciation. Then we write a little bio about the accomplishments and research and sort of job description of the people that you're interviewing on the podcast. And then we'll find links to articles they've published online or research that they've done. And then we'll also find some additional information. And I think Inès has some good stories about what constitutes the additional information section, but that can truly be anything. Maybe you want to elaborate on that.
Like I said earlier, I think it's so awesome that you both know a lot of your guests already. So I take it as a personal challenge to try to find information that you don't know about them. And I've definitely found myself digging through New York Times marriage announcements, trying to find fun facts. That kind of thing.
I remember that.
But I think it's such a cool assignment, right? Because you're researching not only the work of this person, but trying to find what they're like as a person, or what might be interesting to what threads might be interesting to pull at a little bit. So I personally really enjoy kind of starting at the Wikipedia dive and then going and looking at their research and then kind of just trying to find whatever I can. I think it's really special to get to know someone like that.
I want to make sure, I don't want to miss the opportunity in this for people just to get to know you a little bit better. Maybe you could just say a little bit about what's your major? And I know that we had some whimsical questions here, like where do you like to study? What do you like about New Haven? Just give us a little sense of yourself.
Sure, I can start. Sophia here again. I'm a global affairs and econ double major, but interestingly, I think a lot of my interests at Yale have sort of morphed into the healthcare sector. So I work on this podcast. I also did some Tobin research that was public health related for a while. And I'm mostly retired from my extracurricular activities as a senior at this point. But I used to be very involved in a teaching nonprofit that took students in New Haven and taught them about global affairs.
Where is your favorite place to study at Yale?
That's a good question. I think the periodical reading room in Sterling is awesome. I also like Tsai, or even just working in my suite, which is awesome. Yeah.
And what's your favorite thing to eat in New Haven?
What's my favorite thing to eat? I really love Tibetan Kitchen. You guys should go there. It's a really cute restaurant. They have good food.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Inès?
This is Inès here. I'm a sociology major doing the concentration in health and society. So I think it's kind of aligned in a really interesting way with this podcast. Outside of working on the podcast, I work as a research assistant, looking at the societal impact of anti-obesity drugs more from the sociology perspective, which has also aligned really well with some of the topics that we've talked about on the podcast. And I'm also the manager of the Yale Glee Club this year, so I spend a lot of time singing, which is really, really lovely. I guess my favorite study spot, unlike Sophia, I've only been to the periodical room once, and it was not my truth. But I love working in Kroon Hall, which is the environmental science building.
Yeah.
It has
I love that
gorgeous
place.
lighting.
It's incredible.
I've done many a podcast prep there, and I also love L&B room and the architecture
I love the
library.
L&B, except I fall asleep in the chairs.
They're so comfortable. Yeah. You should go back. It's really, really nice. They just redid it.
So one other thing I want to mention that you haven't talked about in terms of what the job has been is you have had very meticulous succession planning, getting Tobias ready and making Tobias be able to step into the shoes fairly seamlessly. And, when I look at his document now, it has your fingerprints all over it. What has that been like, not just for the podcast, but what is that like in terms of thinking about your future and about generativity and how you're able to transmit knowledge and help people and mentor people? Can you speak a little about that?
Yeah, I think one thing to say is Jenny did such a good job prepping us for this role. And I think we kind of had a really great sequence of increasing responsibility with her, even though it was a much shorter timeline. So I think we used a lot of the documents she gave us and kind of added our own spin or what we tried to add during our tenure as assistants. But it has been really interesting thinking about okay, what's important about what I'm doing to share with Tobias. And I think we just had a lot of conversations between us about what we thought were important, because obviously we also do the work slightly differently, and it was interesting to find those differences too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think also just deciding on a timeline, deciding on how do you onboard someone, what are the right times to give someone sort of the lay of the land, but not try to sort of bombard them with the full responsibility at the beginning. I think that was a good learning in terms of how do you slowly onboard someone into responsibility. And I hope we did that well with him.
I mean, based on the outcomes, You've done a great job.
Is great. I think we're in great hands going forward. It's really nice to see. Yeah.
Awesome.
We really mean it when we say that we could not have done this without you. The students are what make this place great. I should note, I told Harlan yesterday, both of you have received or are going to receive the award from Yale for being a superb student worker. And let's face it, there's got to be thousands of student workers here. So to receive that award means a lot, and it's well deserved. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Congrats on the graduation coming up.
Thank you guys so much.
And thank you for nominating us and this opportunity to work.
You deserve it more than that.
We're very grateful.
All right, we'll see how many downloads we get this week. That's a lot of friends and family. We're
counting on you to get this viral. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was so much fun.
All right. Well, they were great. So we'll wrap it up. You've been listening to Health in Veritas with Harlan Krumholtz and Howie Foreman.
So how do we do? To give us your feedback or to keep the conversation going, email us at health.veritas@yale.edu or follow us on any social media, including LinkedIn and Blue Sky.
And give us feedback. We love hearing from you. We will respond. We'll sometimes even bring it into the show. But we love feedback.
Yeah, and we do get periodic feedback. We got someone giving us a response to an episode with James Hamlin last year. I was very happy to see that people are listening.
Yeah.
And if you have questions about the MBA for Executives program at the Yale School of Management, reach out via email for more information or check out our website at som.yale.edu/EMBA.
Didn't you have an amazing session last weekend? Was Jeff Sonnenfeld at the EMBA program?
For the program. I was not there, but the students got an amazing session. He brings in some of the most amazing guests.
I love Jeff. He's incredible. Yeah,
Yep.
But I heard he had a lineup of all-stars.
Yes.
So this podcast, we're fortunate, is sponsored by the Yale School of Management, the Yale School of Public Health, and we're very fortunate to work with two of the people you heard of today, Inès, Gilles, Sophia Stumpf, and we're going to be bringing on Tobias Liu, who's already working with us, terrific student.
And Gloria Beck.
And Gloria Beck, of course, so that's be terrific. And we're fortunate to work with an amazing producer, Miranda Schaefer. So
we got to get her in the studio eventually.
We'll get her in the studio.
We got to.
Talk to you soon, Howie.
Thanks very much, Harlan. Talk to you soon. And congratulations to Inès and Sophia.
Congratulations.